12th president that we are going to know. राजकुमारी अमृत कौर, बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है हमारे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं. हमारी सेक्रेटरी जनरल, उन्होंने ये जिम्मा लिया कि उनके बारे में शी विल प्रेजेंट, और उसके साथ हमारे और भी गेस्ट है जो भी इसमें पार्टिसिपेट करने वाले हैं. आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू शेयर द नेम, इट विल बी अ सरप्राइज फॉर यू. सो बहुत बेसब्री से इंतजार है हमारा ये वेबिनार का, आज के वेबिनार का, एंड वी शुड गो अहेड विथ इट soon. Supriya and Yutika, why don't we begin the program?
Yeah. Sure,
instead
Sheila.
of keeping everyone waiting.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sheila ji. So I welcome everyone again. हमारे साथ हमारी patron हैं, हमारे बहुत important audience हैं from all branches and from outside the branches. I can see there are some guests. So I welcome you all again to this program. As you must have seen the beautiful invite, again, that's Supriya Bhalerao, none other than her. उसमें आपने देखा there are two very important talks today. Yeah, one is by our Secretary General herself, Mrs. Kuljit Kaur, and I'm so thankful to her. And I know her interest in history has been, very old, and she is one of the non-scholars, non-academic scholars who has so much interest in these areas. And she has made a beautiful PPT, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. तो कुलजीत जी, हम आपको बुलाने जा रहे हैं. इनका टॉपिक है for today's talk, Rajkumari as freedom fighter and activist of women's rights. So over to you, Kuljit ji. You can share.
Yes. Yutika, thank you so much. Thanks a lot. और सबको मेरा नमस्कार, गुड आफ्टरनून. जो टॉपिक आज हम शेयर करने जा रहे हैं, I think we are going to learn a lot from her. Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji, our 12th president. She was our 12th president. And I don't know how to start with that because her achievements are so many. And her qualities, full of good qualities, best qualities, or to explain whether my PPT is going to give justice to her qualities and to her achievements. I have tried, but let's see how far I'm successful in that. So this is her photograph, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji. I welcome Amrit Kaur ji to AIWC again. We can feel your presence all around. And this is the sketch which was made by some Bulgarian artist of Rajkumari ji. He was so much fascinated by her personality that he made a beautiful sketch of her. So since I didn't know from where to start, I took this thing when in 2000, Time magazine, they declared 100 such women, those who had achieved something during their lives. That was the women in the century, in the 100 years. And from India, only two ladies were nominated. Two were selected. One was Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji, and second was Indira Gandhi. So they were talking of 1 century, 800 saal mein, the women achievers, and she was one of those. And the citation which was given when her photograph came and when she was selected to be one of the achievers of the century, the citation, I'll just read 2-3 lines. In living her life of luxury, she not only helped build lasting democratic institutions, she also inspired generations to fight for the marginalized. Who was she? This was the young princess returned to India after studying at Oxford and was fascinated by the teachings and principles of Gandhiji and decided that her life's mission was to help India break free from the colonial rule and oppressive social norms. This was the This was the citation given at that time. Now let's see how she achieved all these things and what were the steps she took to be an achiever of Times magazine. This is the photograph which was given in Time magazine, but we'll have a look at the more beautiful photographs of us. On my left side, her parents, Amrit Kaurji's parents, Raja Harnam Singh and Rani Harnam Singh at their summer home. Even the life of their parents is also very interesting, how they met, how they got married, and all those things. But I'm not going to get into that. I'll just talk about Amrit Kaurji. And the second one is Amrit Kaur with one of her brothers dressed for a play. So the very start, how active she was in the dramas also. She's participating in a play. She is dressed up to participate, and along with is her brother. This is a photograph. Amrit Kaur at her school at Oxford. She excelled in all sports and was the captain of the cricket, tennis, and hockey team, a remarkable feat for any Indian girl at that time. So you can just imagine the beginning of her life, at school life. Of course, no, today we are talking about women participating in cricket and tennis and all those things. But during that time, last century, when she was the captain, and that also in a school which was at Oxford. So you can just imagine the beginning of her personality. And she looked so beautiful and so attractive in the photograph also. Now, the Princess of Kapurthala was born in February, on 2nd February 1887 in Lucknow. Before joining Gandhiji, she trained herself by tackling social issues. Why she trained herself? Because from the very beginning, she wanted to join Gandhiji, but her parents were a little bit reluctant. So that's why, and Gandhiji refused to take her in his ashram. So she wanted to prove that yes, whatever she is saying, that is from her heart, and she deserves that place by the side of Gandhiji. So she trained herself by tackling social issues. Women education. At that time, imagine, she was talking about women education, right to vote, and the Parda system. Speaking out against child marriage and Devdasi, the things we are still fighting for, about Parda system and child marriage. At that time, that is a vision that just now Yutika also said. Those people were such great visionary. I don't know how could they think for centuries ahead. At that time, she talked about right to vote for women, education for women. She prepared herself for 20 long years before she joined Gandhiji. So that is a sincerity. That is working from the heart. The immediate trigger to join the freedom struggle was being eyewitness to horrendous tragedy through which Punjab passed after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. All of us, all Indians, we are aware what happened at Jallianwala Bagh when in 1919 a sabha was going on, and without any warning, they started shooting at the public. As per government's figure, the death figure was 350, but as per Congress figure, it was more than 1,000. So she was so much affected by the tragedy that she decided to join the freedom struggle. Service and sacrifice for the country became passion for her. It was a passion, and throughout, till her end, service and sacrifice, those were the motto of her life. She worked as secretary to Gandhiji for 16 years. What drew her to Gandhiji? That she left a life of luxury. What was the reason? She was a royal princess, having all the luxuries of life, staying in a palace and having fun and all the good things of life. And she could have led the life of a princess by marrying a prince, having children, good family, going for the holidays. But why? Why did she leave the life of luxury and started staying in the ashram? In a small room shared by five other people, doing avenging also herself, cooking herself, washing and living with the Harijan women. What was the reason? What was that strong point which fascinated her? She sacrificed everything and came by the side of Gandhiji. In her own words, now what she says, that what drove her to Gandhiji? When Gandhiji made a call to Indians to join the army for the freedom struggle, he stressed that women shall be equally acceptable to him since he needed moral courage more than physical power. So when I read about this definition, I was really impressed about Gandhiji also, that he thought that women, they were the source of moral courage. Maybe they're the source of physical power also, but he needed the help of the women for moral courage. That was the call he had given to the women to come and join the freedom struggle. In 1936, Gandhiji wrote to her also, from my childhood, I have been trying to make women realize her dignity. At that time, he was talking about the dignity of women, and all through, he went on talking. I am now in search of a woman who would realize Kasturba's mission. That what was the mission? That women must live with dignity. So he offered her, are you that woman? Will you be one? Are you that woman who is going to help me, that women can realize her dignity? This was the question he asked. Such fascinating words. Are you that woman? Will you be one? This is how he addressed her. Come and join me and help me in giving dignity to the women of India. Now, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji, she's smiling. She's by the side of Gandhiji. You can see this photograph. The flames of her passionate desire to see India free were fanned by Gandhiji. He thought, why did she join Gandhiji? Of course, she wanted to fight for the freedom struggle, but there was some hidden motto also, hidden reason also. What was that? She thought we can also fight against the evils of society, including the subjugation of women and the evils like Parda system, child marriage, and polygamy. So, what did she think? If she joins Gandhiji, of course, she can participate in the freedom struggle also, but at the same time, the thing which was very close to her heart, that was the right to women, women education, to talk against child marriage, to talk against Parda system. She thought that if I join Gandhiji, I can, in a way, start with this movement also, where we can free the women of India from the slavery, from the subjugation. In a land where women were looked upon only fit to produce children and serve the master, this call to her gender was irresistible. The call made by Gandhiji, because at the time, even now it's like that. Why do we say at that time? Even now, most of the men, most of people, they think that what is the job of a woman? It is only to produce children and serve the master, serve the people of the home, serve her husband. But at the time when Gandhiji made a call, she thought that this call was irresistible and I must join Gandhiji now. Role as activist, as Yutika has said, that she was an activist also and she was a freedom fighter also. So what role did she play by the side of Mahatma Gandhi as freedom fighter, as activist? In 1930, she dedicated her life and participated in civil disobedience. She actively participated in Dandi March. In 1942, she went to jail when she participated in Quit India movement. She was amongst the first to be imprisoned and she felt proud of it. She stayed in jail for 3 years, and according to her own words, she was living in the jail in the company of the criminals. The type of food which were given, dal full of pebbles and kachi roti was given in the jail, but she didn't object, she didn't complain, and it affected her health very badly. So that's why government decided to keep her under house arrest also. But 3 years she was in the prison. So what was the priority when she was in prison? She took her spinning wheel along with. Spinning wheel, Bible, and Gita. That shows her characteristic. What was the priority for her? To read Bible, to read Gita. No discrimination of religion. She was above all these things. And spinning wheel she took because she was motivated, inspired by Gandhiji. And what did she do over there? She spun a sari which she gifted to Ba. Kasturba ji, we call her Ba. So she prepared a sari, she spun a sari over there, and she gave it to Ba. And somewhere I read that after Kasturbaji's death, that sari was given to Sushila Nair, who was another lady health minister of India. In 1930, she participated in the Round Table Conference along with Gandhiji. In 1945 and 46, she was sent as leader of the delegation of UNESCO to London and Paris. Her participation was brilliant. Her participation not only at the national level, but at international level also. She proved herself, and others were fascinated by her personality, by her speech, by her understanding of the matter, by her communicative methods, by all these things. Aruna Asif Ali and Rajkumari Amrit Kaur says, she belonged to a generation who gave up their affluent and sheltered life and flocked to Gandhiji's banner to join national liberation struggle, took to Khadi and plunged headlong into the national movement. Because that's what she's talking about, Rajkumari ji, and about other women also, those who belong to royal families, rich family, how they sacrificed themselves, came forward and fought for the freedom of the country. It was not only that her capabilities were recognized by Gandhiji or by Indians, even the British authorities at that time, they also recognized her capability and appointed her as member of advisory board of education. But what she did when she was to participate in Quit India movement, she immediately resigned from that power post. So this clearly indicates that power didn't matter for her. For her, the passion was her duties only. She was elected to the Constituent Assembly to participate and design the Constitution of India. As member of the Subcommittee on Fundamental Rights, she strongly advocated equal rights for women, gave a proposal for uniform civil code and for universal franchise. Again and again, I don't want to repeat just the vision at that time. Now we are talking after so many years of independence about uniform civil code, and that lady at that time had dreamt that India should have a uniform civil code. This is after Mahatma Gandhi's assassination at the cremation ground. She's sitting there, Amrita ji is sitting there, Amrit Kaur ji, and Lady Mountbatten, Lord Mountbatten, their daughter, and along with that Maulana Azad. And there's one dignitary, I think he's from China at that time, when we lost Mahatma Gandhi ji, when he was shot, and at the time of cremation, she's sitting over there. Post-independence. Now she's participated in the freedom struggle, women issue. Then what happened after independence? She was the first health minister, the only women minister in the cabinet of Jawaharlal Nehru ji. She was the only woman invited by Jawaharlal Nehru to join the Union cabinet after independence as health minister. So as health minister, she was looking after housing also, sports also, and local self-government also. So let's see now in this position, what is her contribution to India and to the health ministry, to the sports, and to other things. Now, as Ajutika has already said, foundation of AIMS. We are today also, we take pride about AIMS, such a historic, such a impressive building we have, and such a vision again about that institution, which is known worldwide now, such a prestigious institution for we Indians to take pride. While the pages of history celebrate her determination to drive out the British, but her zeal and main contribution for the health infrastructure is unparalleled. So I always believe those who have to work, you put them anywhere, they will definitely show themselves and they will definitely shine in that field also. When she was in school, that time also she was shining in the games. When she came back, she was activist shining. When she joined Gandhiji, she was shining at that time also. Wherever she went, people took notice of her personality, of her capability. So as health minister also, what is her contribution? She was a driving force behind the prestigious All India Institute of Medical Science, and established the country's top hospitals and medical colleges. So what was said about her? She inaugurated so many hospitals that the plaques were enough to construct a building. So that can, I mean, you can imagine her contribution, how many infrastructure, how many new hospitals, nursing homes she started during her time. A dream fulfilled, All India Institute of Medical Science. Now, how All India Medical Science, Institute of Medical Science, AIMS came into existence. Little bit about that. In February 1956, he introduced the bill in the Lok Sabha and spoke from her heart. Which is a thing which touches me. When you do something from the heart, you're always successful. We people fail, we don't speak, we don't do from heart. That is where we fail. But if any action, any thought, any dream, it comes from the heart, definitely you are successful in that. It has been my cherished dream that for the postgraduate medical students, we should have an institution which would enable young doctor students to have higher education in our own country. So what did she want? That our doctors, for their education, they don't have to go to other countries, but we should have a system so that they can have their higher education in their own country. This speech sparked a vigorous debate. Where is the money? Some MPs wanted the bill to be adjourned for lack of funds because India had just, you got the freedom and the treasury was empty, hardly any money. So everybody was shocked that there are no funds and this lady is talking about such a huge building, infrastructure and equipment also. He silently heard the arguments, but stood firm and was determined to push it through. By May 1956, how many months? March, April, May. After 3 months, the motion was adopted and the plan for the prestigious institution was born. But what were her efforts? What did she do? How it was completed? It's a very interesting story. It took her several years to collect funds for this. So in a very clever manner, what she did, because everybody knew her, she was an international figure. She invited the president of New Zealand to lay the foundation stone. And when he came for the laying of the foundation stone, what he did? He gave donation of 1.3 crore under the Colombo plan. So this is how she could collect the funds for that infrastructure, for equipment also. Rockefeller Foundation gave money, US government gave money, Australian government gave money, West Germany, Sweden, Dutch government, Ford Foundation, all donated for the building also and for the equipment for AIMS also. This thus was born AIMS. As an autonomous body, for 8 years she presided over the governing body of AIMS. She worked tirelessly for the welfare of nurses and doctors. Now just see her concern for the nurses and the doctors, because she thought that they were overburdened with their work. So that's why she made her personal ancestral holiday home in Summerhill, Simla, called Manovilla, available for use for the nurses and doctors so that they could relax from their overburdened schedule. I've never heard of such thing. So much of concern for the people, those who are working around her, so that she thought that they also need a time to relax, and she gave her own building. We'll just have a look at the building now. This is the place. This is the place which she donated, and she permitted the doctors and the nurses, they could come and relax at such place in Simla. Just have a look how beautiful the place is. I wish I could be a nurse at that time. Her poise and dignity never deserted her. Rather, warmth and understanding were added. As she grew, she became more and more understanding, more and more warmth were added to her character. By 1961, AIMS obtained a global reputation as one of the most prestigious institutes, along with institutions of Canada, US, and other European countries. Even today, we are so proud of that AIMS. In 1961, Queen Elizabeth and Mrs. Kennedy visited AIMS and were highly impressed. See that Mrs. Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, she is writing the guest book, she's putting her signature, and Rajkumari is standing over here. And here the director of AIMS is also standing over there, Mr. Dr. Dikshit. Now, as chairperson of WHO, he led the Indian delegation to the first World Health Assembly and soon became the new champion of this new organization. In 1948, she was the chairperson of WHO, World Health Organization, and was unanimously elected as president of the Third World Health Assembly in 1950. So she was the first woman to be elected as chairperson. She was the first Asian to be elected as chairperson. And she being the non-doctor, first person as non-doctor who was elected as chairperson of WHO. I mean, what an achievement and what a recognition at the international level. She continued to be the chief delegate for India for 5 assemblies. And she was awarded an honorary doctorate by Princeton University also. Now, this is about the infrastructure, about aims, about WHO. Now coming to how she was trying to solve the problem about the other diseases also, which were so common during that time. When the malaria eradication project of WHO was in financial difficulties, she traveled to European countries and collected funds. She was expert in collecting funds. That's how the aims also became a reality. He campaigned for the prevention of malaria, TB, leprosy. Nearly 400,000 Indian lives were saved by mitigating malaria. She helped get penicillin from Canadian government as a gift to the health minister, Amrit Kaur. There she is attending the WHO meeting. You can see the photograph also. Now, contribution to Red Cross. She was vice president. Her composure, critical thinking. What were the qualities which attracted others? That everywhere she was given the high position. It was her thinking, her experience, her wide knowledge of man and matter that received recognition globally and was greatly valued. She was chairperson of Indian Red Cross also, not only international, but Indian Red Cross also. She was there for 14 years. Now she's surrounded by children. Just have a photograph. Just see the look out on her face. She is looking so graceful, so sweet, and smilingly she is doing her duty. And now, as sports minister, that was as health minister. Now we come to her contribution as sports minister. Introduced National Sports Club at Patiala. It's still there. And it's a very important club where our future generation, they get all the trainings over there. She devoted time to plan for health and recreation and believed that no school or college should be recognized unless there is adequate ground for sports. That all schools and colleges, they must have sports, this ground for sports. Why? Because games are the birthright of children. And especially the rural girls should be encouraged to come forward. A champion herself, as I told previously, a tennis player. She was president of All India Lawn Tennis Association 1954. During her tenure, Rajkumari Amrit Kaurji's coaching scheme also started because she realized that all the sports person, they need coaching also. That system of coaching to the players, future players, is still prevalent in India. Now, we are aware about Lady Irwin College. We always think that AIWC's great catch, great achievement was Lady Irwin College. But how did it start? Let's not today see it. She firmly believed that the cause for evils in society was that women didn't have access to education. Even today, we realize the same thing, that how education and empowerment of women are interconnected. She started with the Home Science Undergraduate College in 1932. 1932, the college was started. Initially, there was a problem of funds, as it was with AIMS, but she believed, what was her belief? No good cause ever languished for lack of funds. It may languish for want of good workers. So what did she think? That if you plan from the heart, if you are genuine about something, the funds will automatically come. For want of funds, no project can be stopped. It is for want of good workers, good action. Throughout, she donated money from her own pocket and kept the college going. She was convinced that for women empowerment, this Institute of Home Science was very important. She carried on with undiminished zeal the causes which she was passionate about. Now, this is the building of Lady Irwin College. Those who are at head office or in Delhi, they are familiar with the building. But outside Delhi, they can have just a look that in 1932, she started with this idea of Lady Irwin College, a home science college for young girls at that time. She was member of governing body of Lady Irwin College and saw it growing into postgraduate college. Even when in prison, her moral support was extended to the college. That's what I said. No, whatever she wanted to do, for whatever thing the zeal was there, she was passionate about that. Whatever she started, she was passionate about that. She started in Irving College. Even when she was in the jail, her support was always there. She was present in spirit in whatever she was doing. IWFA was formed to manage the affairs of this college. All of us were aware of that. She was so proud of this institution that whenever any foreign dignitary visited India, she would surely take them to the college and show them around. In 1961, when Queen Elizabeth and Mrs. Kennedy visited India, she took them around the college with great pride and satisfaction. Of course, it was a matter of great pride that at that time to have a college, home science college for young girls. And now you can see her. Queen Elizabeth is in the center and Rajkumari Amrit Kaurji is on the left side. And I think right side must be the principal of the college. I'm not very sure. And both sides, this rows of young girls, the students, you can see them in white, no? Girls are standing over there and Queen Elizabeth and even Mrs. Kennedy also visited Lady Irwin College, but I didn't have the photograph. That's why I'm not able to show it. Her belief was, what did she believe that what the students should do? That after completing the studies should devote 3 years to serve society. So when you enable the girls to become empowered, after that, it is become their moral responsibility to serve the society also. That's what we say, whatever we receive, we must try to give it back. So that was her belief. Every woman must be religious, by which she meant. What was the definition of religion according to Rajkumari with Kaurji? It warms the heart. What is the religion? That gives warmth to the other person. Through your talks, through your behavior, it should be a source of warmth for the other person, lights the faith and tempers justice with mercy and mercy. Whatever justice is given, not with cruelty, but with mercy. That was the definition of religion. That's what I said in the beginning. She was above all these things. No discrimination, nothing. She only believed in mercy, compassion, and in the well-being of humanity. Now, coming to ARWC, why we are talking about her? Her contribution, that was the background. I want to tell the capability of the presidents of All India Women's Conference. They were not only working for All India Women Conference, they were everywhere. They were at the national level, they were at the national, international level. They were the freedom struggle, freedom fighters. They were the activists also. They were sports person also. So these are the qualities which were there in the presidents of All India Women's Conference. That's why after so many years, still ARWC is such a prestigious organization. And we are all proud of the fact that we belong to such an organization. The Rajkumari Amrit Kaur's association starts from the year of inception, 1927, at the first convention in Pune. When did she, got connected with the ARWC? From the very beginning, from the time of inception in 1927. At that time, she was in England due to her ill health. But she wrote, though I was away at that moment, but I rejoiced when I read about the formation of the conference and was present in spirit with the small gathering at Pune. That's why I said that her zeal and passion, though physically she couldn't be present at Lady Irwin College or Ames and all, or at AWC, but she says my spirit was always present wherever I wanted to participate. The same was the condition when the first conference was held in Pune, though she wasn't present in the country at that time due to her ill health, but she says that in my spirit, I was present in that gathering also. In the annual conference of 1931 at Lahore, she was the local member of AIWC reception committee. So when I read about all these things and you read the present constitution, I mean 1931 also, AIWC had the idea of reception committees. Today we talk about the reception committee whenever we have conference, that the chairperson is the vice president and all. But at that time also, 1931 also, we used to have the reception committees. Later she became the chairperson when Rani Rajwade was the secretary general. They both were a lively team and built an abiding foundation for AWC. So what I believe is that maybe there was a post of chairperson at that time. And before you could become president, you could become the chairperson of the organization also. I mean, I don't know, Binaji can throw light on that. I'm not very sure because nothing is there in the constitution about that. But our life says, because in 1989, AIWC issued a special Roshni issue on Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji, about her achievements, about her life, and the tributes were paid by the members of AIWC. So in that Roshni, I came to know that she was the chairperson when Rani Rajwade was the secretary, and both of them had such a good tuning that AIWC achieved a lot during that time when both of them were there. As chairperson AIWC, she often consulted Gandhiji regarding the problems of AIWC. At times, other members also accompanied her to meet Gandhiji. I want to stop here for half a second. Just put yourself into the pages of the history of that time when the members of AIWC, along with Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji, could visit Gandhiji, sit by his side, talk to him, consult him about the matters of AIWC. I mean, it's such a fascinating thing. AIWC members going to Gandhiji, talking to him about AIWC. At least I get fascinated when I think about all these things. Gandhiji, now what did Gandhiji say about AIWC at that time? Gandhiji once told her that AIWC has not justified its existence into Indian soil, especially in villages. So what was his dream? That if AIWC wants to become an organization of the common man of India, they must go to the villages and work in villages. We must widen the scope of activities to be the real representative working for the mass of Indians. So what did he say? If you want to work for the Indians, if you got zeal and passion that you want to work for the women of India, you should start from the village only. You should start from the grassroots only. You should start from the rural areas only. That's what Gandhiji, that was his advice to Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji when she was discussing about AIWC with him. She herself also believed there was no sphere of national life where women cannot contribute, provided they have the will to serve. It was her faith in the womanhood, in the capability of women. This is her photograph as president of All India Women's Conference. Just have a look and go back to those periods when she was the president. So graceful, so nice. It's so beautiful. When she became president of AIWC in 1937, in her presidential address, she said, what did she say? She was such a great person. But what did she say? Sisters, such meager service. I mean, she was giving such a great service to the country, and she said, such meager service as we have been permitted to render, if it humbles us. So what did she say? Don't have the ego. Don't be proud of the fact that I am working for the women of the country. but which should humble us that we have been given the opportunity to give a meager contribution for the welfare of this nation. And make us see ourselves in true perspective is the only way where lies progress. I mean, that shows her humility. All the service she had given to the nation, she's saying it a meager service. And today, what is our condition? We do this much of work and we say we do in the whole of the country, we want to bajao that danda that I have done this, I have done that. But just compare yourself, the people of those times, how humble they were. She believed that AWC has to contribute to the new life that is pulsating throughout the country. But now we think like that if we want to achieve something, we must contribute and to the new life which is pulsating. We must feel the life of the rural people, of the marginalized, of the grassroots level. She devoted 38 years of her life to AWC. AWC grew from strength to strength. It had 148 branches at that time, covering all provinces of the country. It feels so good to think even at that time we had 148 branches. Her inspiration brought thousands of women into this field with the sole aim of working for the people by starting what were the work they were doing at that time? Mobile clinics, libraries, nursing schools, creche for the children, working women hostel in different parts of the country. He also believed that branches should adopt villages and gave clear guidelines how through small committees in the mohallas, members can reach families and help them grow. This was the practical approach he had. Adopt the villages, adopt the mohallas, go to mohallas, make committees. I mean, she believed that if you wanted to help people, if you wanted to help the families, you must be familiar with the problems of those families. You must be in touch with those families. Only then you can help them. Only then you can create awareness in their mind. Once in a while, you stand on the dais, take a mic, say something. It doesn't create any impact. If you want to create any impact, adopt the villages, go to the houses, adopt the mohallas, and then talk to those people at one-to-one level. Only then you will be able to bring the change. You must know the pulse of the country, the pulse of your countrymen. Put yourself at the same level. Try to understand their problems. Only then you will be able to help them in solving their problems. At present, and even now, we are doing the same thing. We are trying to adopt villages. We are trying this mobile clinics. We have libraries, nursing schools, creches, working women hostel. Of course, so much more has also been added. But all those works which they had started, our past presidents, we are continuing with those activities even today. She was so dedicated to AWC that she was willing to do anything to keep it afloat. She kept contact with committees at the international level also. She sent AWC representatives to campaign for universal franchise. She was the moving spirit behind the fight for legislations for women, child marriage, for the system, Devdasis, for the right for education, and was always involved in all the activities of AWC. Such fast growth of ARWC was due to such pioneer women who strive to achieve and work for the society on the principle of social justice, equal rights, integrity, opportunities for all, no discrimination at the level of political, religious, caste, or anything. Equality for all, equal rights for all, social justice for all, and all work with integrity, dedication, and honesty. Her views on reservation for women. She said, I have been a fighter for women's rights, but I have learned that to demand rights is not so uplifting as to show in my work that one is worthy of enjoying the rights. She said, I don't want to demand the right, but through my worthiness, through my capability, I want to show that these rights which are being demanded, I deserve those rights. So she believed if there was equality in franchise, women can reach the legislation and the administrative services also. So she was a great distinct supporter of um, right for vote for women at that time, which was unthinkable during that time. In other words, she said, do not demand, But come on, through your work, through your action, through your skill, through your passion, the people should be forced to give you your rights, not that you have to demand for that. Nehruji once said there is always a touch of distinction what she says or writes, but a principle, love continues to be the women's movement. This princess turned Gandhi and fought Nehru on depriving women in political participation. When Jawaharlal Nehru, he didn't nominate any women member in the Congress Working Committee at the time, she raised voice and she fought for the women's rights. In fact, she was sometimes intemperate in her criticism of congressmen at that time. She had expectations from the younger generation. Even today we have that. She wrote, I want to pass on my work to younger hands as I get older, but I have a hard time in finding people who are willing to work and devote time. Even today, we talk about the same thing, that we want young generation to come forward, younger hands to come forward, but there are hardly any people, any youngsters, those who are willing to work and devote time. Now I am talking about her last journey. In her last journey on February 7th, she was born on February 2nd, and the last journey was on February 7th, 1964. So many flowers were placed on her body by poor people who owned something to her. I mean, if you go into the details, the people, those who used to serve her at her house, you will be fascinated by their comments, by the stories. But I didn't want to go into that detail, but I will advise everyone to please read about her, because I got one video in which it was said that she has been forgotten. No, she's not forgotten. We can never forget her. After so many years, we are still talking about her. So such people, the country can never forget their loyalties, their participation, their zeal, their passion, their contribution. We are proud of that, and rather we are thankful to that for all those things they have done for us. So many people, they placed flowers on her body. It seems that she was sleeping on a forest of flowers. Tributes poured in from Indian personalities as well as from countries like Switzerland, Australia, USA, UK, and from the rest of the world. It is said that Gandhiji made heroes out of men of clay. Here was a heroine for which Gandhiji must take credit. Whatever she became ultimately, maybe the credit. She had that inherent qualities also, but the way she was molded as a heroine of this country, much of that credit Gandhiji can also take. She never married and transformed herself from royalty to the ashram, to the solitary confinement where she slept on the floor in the company of rats, eating half-cooked food with pebbles, but she accepted it all gracefully. That was the greatness. That was Rajkumari. Rajkumari Amrit Kaur is not dead. That was her last journey, but she is still living. She's around us somewhere. Whatever we are talking about her, I'm sure she is listening to that. Life has set her free. Charity, compassion, tolerance were the essence of her personality. She will always remain a smiling face for all of us, like this photograph of hers. And I believe Indira Gandhi, she borrowed her hairstyle. And just have a look. She was always smiling like this. We can never forget her. And we will never forget. She will always be in our memories, always present in ARWC and all around. Today, when ARWC is celebrating the past presidents, the younger generation must understand and appreciate the values for which BBG Rajkumari Amrit Kaur Ahluwalia, daughter of Harnam Singh, stood for. We hope through her work, her memory will live on forever and inspire the youth of today. So this is my tribute to Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji. Thank you so much for listening to me. And now you are in for a great surprise. Yutika, back to you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last,
Thank
yes.
you, Kulji.
Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, a woman who was born to rule but chose to serve. She was a royal princess. She could have chosen to rule also, but she became a servant to the country. A woman who lived so nobly yet served so humbly. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Kunji. That was such a wonderful presentation and so much to learn from this. I mean, I'm sure we were all lost in this when you were speaking, and we don't have words to, appreciate, because so much information you gave, such important things you talked about. And then coming to, we will discuss. I'm sure our audience have questions, observations, comments. But let's move on. As you said, there's some surprise in store for us, is it?
Yes,
So
yes.
let me.
Great surprise.
Yes. So,
Fascinating surprise.
so before that, let's see this. Right.
Okay, okay, okay.
Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, a princess who left a life of luxury and privilege to join India's freedom struggle. She later became independent India's first woman cabinet minister. A trailblazer of her time, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur is an inspiration even today. But how do you take her story to a new generation of Indians, the millennials who may not have heard of her? Two Chandigarh-based brothers, Siddhant and Vikrant Das, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur's great-grandnephews, both in their 20s, are trying to preserve and document her legacy. They feel hers is a story that needs to be told to youngsters like themselves.
Rajkumari Amrit Kaur was, of course, born in the late part of the 19th century in Lucknow, Badshah Bagh. And of course, she was the daughter of Raja Sir Harnam Singh and the Prince of Kapurthala. She had 7 brothers, and all of them, in fact, most of them were educated in England. And she had the privilege of going to Sherborne in Oxford and got herself educated in the French, Italian, and many ways, a lot of art, culture, etc. What struck her the most is that, especially when she came back to India, is the stark difference between the level of equality and the level of freedom that people in Europe enjoyed and the people in India were enjoying. And that sense of injustice and that sense of inequality really appealed to her. So she came back in 1915. She got in touch with Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who was my great-grandfather's very close friend. And she got inspired. She heard about Gandhiji, and the one act of the British, which was 1919 Jallianwala Bagh, really enraged her. And that's when she decided to really jump into the freedom movement and join Gandhiji and his forces and give up her princely life.
The Das brothers have carefully preserved many interesting objects with fascinating backstories that remind them of their family's legacy. For example, this hand puppet Uno, named after the United Nations. Rajkumari Amrit Kaur's brother, Sir Maharaj Singh, used this puppet to make a case for India's independence in New York.
Their great-grandfather then was also a member of the delegation which went to the UNGA before independence, and no one was really hearing him, right? So, and he was a ventriloquist. So he took these 2 puppets, in fact, one puppet is named Uno, United Nations organization, named after that. And to make a point, because India was a third world country, still struggling for independence, he actually held a puppet show so that people, delegates from the first world countries would actually take up notice.
Siddhant's younger brother, Vikrant Das, has been in the forefront of preserving the old family documents and photographs and helped create a comprehensive family archive. Vikrant spoke to us about how piecing together the family story can even begin from a simple Google search.
We started searching. We had a few documents with ourselves, letters that were written here and there, personal letters, official letters. There are many searching for, generally searching our name on Google, searching our family's name on Google as well, opened up many doors for us. Once you start searching for something and you hook onto little bits and pieces here and there, finding family members of contemporaries, finding descendants of contemporaries from that era has helped us a lot. In fact, my brother has gotten in touch with India Hicks, who is the granddaughter of Lord Mountbatten, and exchanged some notes and all. So that really helps, knowing that you're not alone and there is somebody with whom you can share. We have our parents and our grandparents and our ancestors to thank for that they have preserved all these photos, documents and all like till date, and it's that we're only carrying forward, like simple things like using acid-free paper or in fact opening up documents and just giving them a normal dust, not letting them not keeping them moist, opening them up every summer. It is a tedious task when you have many, but you have to do it if you want to preserve it, right? Maintaining these things takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But if you're willing to do it, I think you can preserve a lot and keep for generations to come.
At a time when family archives across India are being dispersed and destroyed, and oral history is being forgotten, this effort by the Das brothers to preserve the story and legacy of a great leader like Rajkumari Amrit Kaur
every summer, it is a tedious task when you have many for generations to come.
At a time when family archives across India are being dispersed and destroyed, and oral history is being forgotten, this effort by the Das brothers to preserve the story and legacy of a great leader like Rajkumari Amrit Kaur is commendable and must be an inspiration for others like them.
So,
Yutika,
yeah,
please.
now's the time to disclose our guest speaker.
Yes.
So as you could see from the video, they are the great grandnephews of Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. We have right here with us. Can you disclose yourself? Mr. Siddhant Das, are you there? Can we see you? Where are you,
Yes,
Siddhant?
welcome, Siddhant.
Is he around?
Yes, he is here. Unmute yourself. You're muted, Siddhant.
Yes, I hope I'm audible now.
Yes.
You are audible, but you're not visible. Can you stop? Sheila ji, I think you are sharing.
No. He can be.
Siddhant, you can now come on the screen.
Yes,
You're permitted to come now.
I have pinned him.
I'm on the screen, ma'am.
Okay,
I
also
can
I
see
can't see you.
you.
Yes, now I can see you.
Welcome,
Yes, now
Siddhant.
he is.
Welcome. Okay. Now everyone knows whom we were hiding.
Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
Namaste.
So let me introduce Siddhant to everyone. I mean, his claim to fame, of course, is that he is the great grandnephew of Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. But there are so many more things to him, and I'm sure you'll be impressed. I am, because, the way you are preserving history is amazing. Looking at those old files that you just showed, it gives me goosebumps. It is what we deal, this is what we call history. So here is Mr. Siddhant Das, the great grandnephew of Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji. He was born in Delhi and is an entrepreneur and investor based in Chandigarh. With a passion for studying the history of the independence movement and in particular the life of Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji, Siddhant is a member of the Ahluwalia dynasty through his mother and the great grandson of Raja Sarharnam Singh Ahluwalia, the Prince of Kapurthala and the father of Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. He, along with his brother, Mr. Vikrant, can we see him also? Is he around? Siddhant?
I believe he's joined the meeting. I would request him if he would just open the video because he's in the other room.
Yeah, so that we can see him. This is the time to disclose yourselves. Yes. With his brother, Mr. Vikrant, they are the great grandnephews and legal custodians of Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. and are working on documenting her life by digitizing their family archives to bring about more awareness amongst the young generations about the sacrifices of their family in India's independence struggle. They're great. Good to have you. Good to have you, Vikrant, also. Along with enlightening the younger generations about the importance of Mahatma Gandhi and his teachings and how it has impacted their family right up till today. So that's a great initiative, and we are so pleased to have you with us. Now, you are going to show us a brilliant PPT. I know it is going to be rare sights for us. And he's going to talk about how he remembers Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, remembering Rajkumari. Go on, over to you, Siddhant. You may share.
Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am, Sheila ma'am, and last but of course not the least, Jeet ma'am. And I hope I'll be able to do justice to today's presentation. So, just begin. I hope everybody can see the screen and the PPT is visible.
Yeah, it has to.
Yes, we can see.
Right. So I'll begin. First of all, good afternoon, namaste, sat sri akal, adab, ladies and gentlemen, if there are any. I would just request if people could not comment because it's with my notes are in between, so I can refer to that. Just a second. Yes. So sorry for that. It indeed is a privilege for me to be here before you, albeit virtually, speaking to someone who is close not to us, but Indians of the world. And with the All India Women's Conference, and particularly Secretary General, Madam Kuljeet Kaur, who not only gave a wonderful presentation, but also reached out to me and gave me this opportunity to share with you all the untold story, the life and times of India's finest stateswoman, a woman who was born to rule but chose to serve, a woman who lived so nobly yet served so humbly. Amrit Kaurji was the only surviving daughter among 9 children born to Raja Sir Harnam Singh Ahluwalia, the younger son of Raja Sir Randhir Singh, the erstwhile ruler of the Kapurthala state, in the direct line founded by the legendary Sikh warrior saint Baba Jassa Singh Ahluwalia. She was born at Badshah Bagh, Lucknow University campus. She grew up with the proverbial silver spoon in her mouth. Some of her earliest recollections include riding a pony on the vast grounds of Badshah Bagh, an estate owned by her grandfather and managed by her father as part of the Awadh estates of the royal family. In fact, some 90 acres from this estate were later leased out for ₹3 per annum to the Canning College, which subsequently became the Lucknow University. Harnam Singh Ji left Kapurthala after the premature death of his elder brother led to a struggle for the succession of the Kapurthala throne. It is said that he lost all the family jewels and estates and was exiled to Jalandhar. Under the influence of his English tutor, Reverend Woodside, and aided by a Bengali Brahmin turned missionary, he, much like his friend Maharaja Dalip Singh, son of the last Sikh ruler of Punjab, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, converted at the tender age of 18, thus giving up his rights to the Kapurthala throne for good and enabling him to establish a separate branch of the Ahluwalia dynasty. In Amrit Kaurji's own words, he lost a lot in material possessions, but that only made his belief and character awe-inspiring. She inherited her nationalism from her father, Harnam Singh, and he and his family left Kapurthala for good to make a name for themselves. In her own words, and I'm quoting, prince and princesses in that era as well as this have much effect on the lives of ordinary people. In fact, most of them were involved in quote unquote riotous living and showing off their excess wealth, which was bound to crumble one day. The British were partly to blame for this, as they believed in keeping the princes illiterate and in watertight compartments. Amrit Kaurji and her brothers were brought up in a truly secular manner. They were taught the Mahabharata and the Ramayana by their mother from birth and had much knowledge of Hindu mythology and the epics. They also never forgot the Sikh roots. They wore the kara as an identifying symbol and were cremated as per Sikh rites, which is still followed, a tradition which is still followed by the descendants of Raja Sir Harnam Singh. In fact, he himself never gave up his turban and also kept his beard till his death. He was a proud nationalist. She and her brothers, despite being surrounded by luxury, were brought up very strictly. Her mother, Rani Harnam Singh, was a Bengali and a Presbyterian, which according to Amrit Kaurji counted for her strict upbringing. In her own words, and I quote, I am more than appreciative of a strict upbringing, which enabled me to realize the essentiality of discipline. My brothers and I were taught that telling the truth was important, that sharing our toys was proper, that quarreling was wrong, that rudeness to anyone was intolerable, and kindness to animals was a duty, that cleanliness and tidiness was essential, and that disobedience would be severely punished. Now, even though her parents were Christians, Amrit Kaurji and her family were firmly Indian in their traditions and were therefore never denationalized, as were many other Indian Christians by the misguided missionaries. It was such a mistake for Indian Christians their lovely Indian names for English ones be divorced from Indian traditions and culture simply because they were supposed to be Hindu or Muslim in origin, to live a segregated life in mission compound and mission service away from the national life. Later on in life, Amrit Kaurji adopted what is known as Raj Dharma in Sanskrit, or spirituality for the greater good of the entire human race. This is a never before seen photograph of my great grandparents, Sir Harnam Singh and Lady Harnam Singh in their old age. This is for the first time we're sharing photographs of her parents. It's never been seen before in public. Amrit Kaurji attended school independence and opportunity during that time. She stood out as a pioneer for young women of her era and ended up as the head girl of the school. She spent most of her holidays in England, which gave them a good taste of English food, a taste which is carried forward by their descendants. Their parents were very strict and gave them a meager allowance, which went right up to university. The guardians were carefully chosen, who in this case happened to be a clergyman, a vicar of a very poor parish in Ramsgate, which was by no means a fashionable seaside resort. The extremely simple life and sense of service by the vicar and his family had a deep impact on Amrit ji and her brothers, which carried on for the rest of their very distinguished lives. In her own words, some of her happiest moments in life were in England, and it was in Sherborne that she learned some important life lessons, like discipline and good behavior, not only for one's own benefit, but for the good of others. The joys of corporate life, where the cult of give and take is instilled at an early age, of adherence to an ideal, whatever the cost, of loyalty to the community and the country as against loyalty to oneself. of love of acquiring knowledge in order to make good use of it. And last, but certainly not the least, a belief in God as essential for growth. By the time Amrit Kaurji finished her schooling, Australia and New Zealand were the only places where women were given the right to vote, and the feminist movement in England was gathering pace. All this gave her the much needed determination to set things right in her own country, a dream which was shared by many of her famous colleagues, Sarojini Naidu and Annie Besant. So after leaving school at Sherborne, she did not go home directly. In fact, she chose to carry on in England, increasing her knowledge about literature, history, French, and music. Nevertheless, she was a frequent traveler to Europe, mostly for health reasons. And on these many trips, she gave finishing touches to her formal education as well. She learned Italian and French, having a natural gift for languages, learned the violin, and became proficient in the piano. She fulfilled her love for great music and traveled and collected artworks from Europe's finest art galleries. She was a regular at the theatre, steeping herself in drama and ballet. She read the great classics of Western literature like Shakespeare and became somewhat of a connoisseur of all things cultural. Now, according to Gandhiji, Amritji's parents were wise in not making her take a university degree. And with his delightful humor, when she said, and I quote, "I should have been allowed to qualify for the question." And he would say, "Well, you and I can boast that we were successful in the London matriculation, are both without a degree and without a profession, because long ago I was disbarred by the London legal authorities and therefore considered unfit to practice at the bar. But is it not a great thing to become servants of the public? Because surely it is the best profession of all." Amritji wanted a degree in medicine, but this was frowned upon by her parents, who felt that there is no need for their only daughter to go in for higher education and do a job. Besides, having one son, a doctor, was good enough. Amritji's parents were getting old, and they wanted the children to come back to their roots, lest they became too accustomed to living abroad. Upon her return from England, Amritji had no idea what path her life was going to take. She was fashionable, elegant, sophisticated, wealthy, and chaperoned everywhere. But there were hints of social consciousness, and as she wrote, and I quote, "Even in my late adolescence, I felt a strange awareness. I knew that mine was not the real world. I remember, for instance, a feeling of guilt on seeing beggars. Upon my return to India, this feeling became stronger and stronger. So at 20 years old, after spending nearly 8 years abroad, she found herself in the familiar surroundings of her father's princely home. She was a highly eligible young woman, for an alliance with the House of Kapurthala was an honored one. But suitor after suitor was turned away, and she refused to marry. This perhaps could be attributed to one incident at an evening ball at the Viceregal Lodge in Shimla. Quoting from her personal memoirs, "I realized very shortly after my return from England how great the gulf was between the British officials and the educated and politically awakened Indian. When I arrived in Shimla, the Viceroy and the Viceroy, whom my parents had come to know of over the years, gave a dinner party for whom they termed season's debutantes and their parents. I was the only Indian girl, but apart from my parents, there were three other princes. I was taken into dinner by a high-up military official from army headquarters. After asking me where I was educated and complimenting me on the way I spoke English, he began lecturing me about India. a memory which has remained vivid till this date. India has been changing for the worse of late, he said. How? I asked. Time was when Indians, when they saw a European coming, at once closed their umbrellas. If they happened to be carrying them as a mark of respect, they always stepped off the pavement for an Englishman. They would never board a bus or a tram before a white man had stepped in. I refer mostly to Calcutta, which was still the capital of India at that time. But even in Shimla, I see signs of a kind of revolt, which is not a good omen for the future. I was astonished at these remarks and asked the colonel, why do you sense deterioration in such behavior? I am horrified to learn that my countrymen ever behaved in such a servile manner, and I'm delighted that they have seen the error in such behavior. This is not what I have learned from my education in your country, where human dignity is respected and cringing abhorred. I was so cross, I refused to speak to him throughout the evening. After dinner, the Viceroy ordered the band to play dance music and dance with each one of us in turn. And we had an enjoyable time in what was a very nice dance floor. When the Viceroy and the Viceroy had said good night, I found my father in earnest conversation with the three other princes. The latter were furious with him for allowing me to dance. In their opinion, quote unquote, not an Indian word for dance was only meant for particular kind of girls and not for quote unquote our girls. They told my father if this was the result of mine having been educated in England, none of their daughters would ever be educated. In those days, most of the princesses observed parda, in that Amrit ji was somewhat of a pioneer. She asked them if they wanted her to remain behind the veil, which of course she could not possibly do, or whether they would object to her playing tennis, cricket, riding, etc. She asked her father if he was of the same opinion, and he agreed with his friend's opinions. She'd never danced since that evening. An argument that weighed on her mind later on was that while Europeans had no objections to dancing with Indian girls, they did not like Indians dancing with European girls. All this sounds very strange in today's India, where so many men and women dance and the prejudices, whether racial or traditional, have to a large extent vanished. Anyhow, Amritji's first dinner party at Viceregal Lodge taught her many important life lessons. This is a rare photograph of her family and her brothers and her surviving brothers, along with the pet dog. The gentleman standing on the left is her brother, Kaur Inderjeet Singh, who was an officer of the Indian Medical Service and served as a captain in the army. He was killed in Flanders and France in World War I during action. The gentleman standing on the right is her favorite brother, Kaur Shamsher Singh, or Shami, who was also a doctor whom she shared Manaville with. The gentleman sitting on the left is her eldest brother, Raja Raghbir Singh, who was a distinguished civil services officer in Punjab, having served as DC in various districts. The gentleman seated on the right is my great-grandfather and Sir Maharaj Singh, who succeeded his elder brother as the head of the family on his death and who became a distinguished ICS officer and the first Indian governor of Bombay State. In that capacity, he also saw the last British troops off from the gateway of India. The gentleman cross-legged on the carpet on the left is Kaur Jasbir Singh, who was also a meritorious civil services officer from the United Provinces and served as DC of various districts, including Lucknow. The gentleman on the right, seated cross-legged, is Kaur Dalip Singh, who became a distinguished judge of the Lahore High Court and was Agent General of India to Kashmir in 1947. Of course, Amrit Kaur is standing in the middle in white, with her parents seated in the middle, along with the family dog. Again, these are rare photographs, never before seen. This is the princess in her young days before becoming a dedicated Gandhian and freedom fighter. The first photo is a young, fashionable Amrit Kaur ji in a traditional silk sari. The second photo is a slightly older Amrit Kaur ji in 1932, a portrait by the now famous Bulgarian artist Boris Georgiev, who as a young man came to Simla and stayed with her in her home Manavil as a guest, where he sketched most of India's independence leaders, including Gandhiji and Panditji. The portrait was later auctioned at Christie's abroad. Now, in her youth, she would in her liveried rickshaw, which was 4 men in the blue and silver colors of Kapurthala, barefoot and turban, rolled into town, which was 4 miles east of Summerhill, to attend parties or play bridge, or have her hair waved by the Swiss hairdresser, who groomed all of Shimla ladies. In the evening, she and Uncle Shami would sit in the long upstairs room, which looked down to the distant plains below Shimla's famed monsoon sunset, sipping sherry and vermouth. Her spoiled terrier Tofa and her favorite niece Jaya, who I'm quoting out here, would be given 2 chocolates, always Swiss. Now, Gandhiji deeply impacted Amrit Kaur ji, and in many ways, he actually, quote unquote, converted her. After meeting him, she totally devoted herself to the country. She became a vegetarian. She stopped serving alcohol at parties. She started spinning khadi, lost her sense of humor, stopped playing the piano, and to her nieces and family members became quote unquote boring. She even encouraged the young women in her family to wear khadi saris, which was rather uncomfortable, but nevertheless they still wore it out of respect for Aunt B. Where Aunt B stands for BBG. Aunt B would lecture her nieces about the wicked British who must be driven out of India with the help of every man, woman, and child. Nevertheless, she herself remained unchanged, a little bent, a little careworn, often impatient with the follies of the younger generation, but the same poise, the same grace, the same flawless voice and exquisite English, and the same unfailing fragrance about her, the assurance of breeding. Amrit Kaurji's ideas about women were greatly influenced by Gandhiji. He believed that men and women were equal in status. He wanted them to be strong enough so that they didn't have to demand for equal rights. It would come to them naturally on account of their work. Yet he blamed them for degenerating and becoming the quote unquote playthings of men. He felt that they had lost a great deal of their heritage and respect. They should be as pure as Draupadi and Sita and those immortal heroines of our great civilization. He believed that womankind, if they were organized, they had a higher capacity for struggle and suffering than men. God had made men stronger physically, but morally, women were far more superior in strength. And it was this strength he wanted the women to recognize and channelize it towards the freedom struggle. And Amrit Kaurji was a shining example of this. Upliftment of women, as is well known, was very close to her heart. There were justices to women which had to be set right. For example, the evils of child marriage, polygamy, no right of inheritance, of the hardships of widowhood, of the dowry system, of the seclusion of women, of the lack of education and medical care, tension, and so on. All this gave her the motivation to co-found an organization like the All India Women's Conference. Her approach to women's issues was radical and practical, but not always popular. For example, her views on the Dowry Prohibition Bill 1959 were clear. Speaking in Parliament, she felt it was of no use and she couldn't have been all right. According to her, if the parent of a boy demands a dowry, well, the parent of a girl should be willing to resist and say no, no, and not be upset should his daughter remain unmarried. We have got to change the outlook of the parents. Today, it is felt that the daughter must be married. Why must she be married? Bring her up to earn her own living and let her and the future husband find their own feet. She believed that in time we have got to allow our young people to choose their own husbands and their own wives. And that will be the proper end of the dowry system. Life at Sevagram with Bapu and the other Ashramites was very interesting. They got up early in the morning around 4 a.m. The daily prayers were multi-faith, mostly in Sanskrit. They grew their own vegetables and fruits in the nearby farms, and they even tilled the land themselves. They cleaned their own toilets, they washed their own clothes, they cooked their own food, and they interacted with the village women, including Harijans, teaching them the basic hygiene and healthy habits. They slept on the floor. Interviews were given over long walks by Bapu, and weaving and taking care of and reports. They also did manual scavenging, cleaning the villages of human and cattle excreta. The great thing about Bapu as a leader was that he never asked anyone to do what he had not done at one time himself. And he was an amazing judge of the capacity of those to whom he entrusted work. Amrit Kaurji remembered being given tasks to which she was wholly new. But when she pleaded to be excused, he was adamant. And now, looking back at those illuminating times spent with him, she realized that in his ability to take all kinds of work from all kinds of people lay his power of building up character and leadership. These are a few photographs of Bapu and Amrit Kaurji. A photo of the working committee of the All India Women's Conference in Lahore, 1931, where a young Amrit Kaurji is seated fourth from left. I suppose this would be of much relevance to your organization. And I suppose there are a lot of familiar faces which the members.
This is Amrit Kaurji by the side of Margaret Cousin, where my cursor is.
This is Margaret Cousins. This is Muthulakshmi Reddy.
And this is Rajkumari.
Muthulakshmi Reddy. This
Correct.
is
The center.
Rajwade.
I'll move on. So the transformation from princess to Gandhian and Ashramite was truly complete. The first glimpse of this was when Amrit Kaurji refused the coronation medal, which was presented to her by the governor of Punjab on 17th August 1937 on behalf of His Majesty the King Emperor. Her letter of refusal to the governor, Sir Herbert, became instantly famous. Extracts of that correspondence are read as follows. Dear Sir Herbert, I have to thank you for your letter and the coronation medal. I feel I must tell you, I have developed a distaste for all ceremonials. I have, as you may know, given up writing my name in the government houses. I am against pomp and pageantry, which I feel are part and parcel of imperialistic ambitions, in which I do not care to have a share. I wish, therefore, to disappear from attending or participating in official ceremonial functions, without, however, causing irritation to anyone. My personal friendships with government officials will, of course, remain unimpaired. I shall be grateful if you would convey my feelings in the matter to His Excellency the Viceroy, and I trust you will appreciate my viewpoint. With kindest regards to Lady Emerson, who I hope is keeping as well as possible, and yourself, yours sincerely, Amrit Kaur. The governor replied to her, "Dear Rajkumari, I write to thank you for your letter of the 25th August 1937. I have noted your wishes and conveyed them to His Excellency the Viceroy. Had I been aware of them, I should not have embarrassed you by including your name in the list of ladies to whom the coronation medal is to be presented. But I myself included your name in appreciation of the social and educational work you have done and are doing. I am glad that your feelings do not affect personal friendships. My wife is doing fairly well, but I write she has to go. She joins me in kindest regards." This is a letter accompanying the coronation medal conferred by the king himself on distinguished personalities. I'm revealing this for the first time. It's not known publicly that she actually refused the coronation medal. During the Quit India movement, Gandhiji was arrested and so was Amrit Kaurji. And I quote, quoting her, "I was surrounded by a bevy of policemen, the IG and the SP. All these officers to arrest poor little me. They took me to second-class waiting room and asked a woman to search me. The woman refused, so she wasn't searched. Instead, she was put into a car and taken to Ambala jail. Here she was given solitary confinement for 6 weeks in a jail meant for habitual criminals. There I was with no books, pencils, pen, or paper, living in loneliness and on criminal feed. I was the only woman. The food was awful. The bread was full of grit and pebbles. Ill and weight dropped 8 pounds. This act of and her, this act of the British and her sacrifice spoke volumes about her character, and she inspired so much respect that at least one English ICS officer thought nothing about losing his job in protesting this act of government. That ICS officer was Peril Moon, the DC of Amritsar at that times. In independent India, he became Deputy Chief Commissioner, Himachal Pradesh, and later Chief Commissioner. He died in 1987 in England. The rigors of imprisonment was too much for her, and after 3 months, she was released by the British under police escort, who feared that she may die under their watch. She was so weak she could hardly stand. To recover her health, she was placed under house arrest in Simla, where she remained away from the struggle for 3 long years. As soon as she was all right, she wrote to Gandhiji again, "My health is all right. Could I disobey some law again and go to jail?" After numerous sacrifices, thousands of lives lost, and years of struggle, freedom did come at last, but it came at a great cost. Lord Mountbatten of Burma was chosen to be the last Viceroy of India. And here that he, his wife, Edwina, and Amrit Kaurji formed their close friendship. A new country called Pakistan was carved out and led to the greatest migration in human history. Amrit Kaurji, as first health minister, plunged herself into looking after the thousands of refugees coming in from Pakistan. She visited the camps around Delhi in Faridabad. She spoke to the nurses, doctors, and patients and took a round of the hospitals with great enthusiasm and never dying energy, which boosted the morale of everyone around her. This is a photograph of the first cabinet of India and Amrit Kaurji as the only woman in that first cabinet. So, due to her efforts in the independence struggle, her gift for speaking, natural wit and charm, she was chosen as the first health minister in Jawaharlal Nehru ji's first cabinet. Interestingly, Amrit ji was not the first choice of Nehru for the health ministry. He wanted the post to go to Hansa Jivraj Mehta. One possible reason for this, according to the author Sankar Ghosh in his book Jawaharlal Nehru, a biography, was that she was sometimes indiscreet and intemperate in criticism of congressmen. However, due to Gandhiji's intervention and insistence, she was chosen as the first health minister, and in that charge, she also was in charge of housing, sports, and local self-government, along with health. In August 1947, the Mahatma wrote to her, and I quote, "So you are minister, you have to be firm and true. I see you will always have the whole family in your hands now. It is all as it should be." A few days later, he wrote, "Are you in charge of physical health only or moral health also? The latter seems to be worse than the former. I am waiting one day." On January 30th, 1948, Amrit Kaur was supposed to address the members of the YWCA of Delhi at their annual meeting. As she rose to speak, she was called away to answer an urgent telephone call. Shortly, she returned to the speaker's table, and for a moment she stood looking at the gathering. Gandhiji has been shot. She sat down abruptly, as if her legs would no longer hold her. There was a desperate quietness in the hall as she rose again. Best thing for us to do is to disperse as quietly as possible and go to our homes. And the second era, the years with Bapu, came to a tragic end. Her achievements, as Madam Kuljit Kaur has very carefully and wonderfully shown everybody through her PPT. I will not be spending much time, but I will go through them very briefly. She was a champion tennis player and the captain of the cricket, tennis, and hockey teams at Sherborne. She was Mahatma Gandhi's personal secretary for 16 years, first woman cabinet minister of India, a member of the Constituent Assembly where she advocated for a uniform civil code. In fact, she contributed to the establishment of constitutional equality of men and women, which is guaranteed under Articles 14, 15, and 16. She also played a crucial role in the inclusion of Uniform Civil Code as part of the directive principles of state policy, and was really disappointed that it was not part of the fundamental rights. She set up AIMS, the National Institute of Sports, also employee social security schemes like ESI, PF, etc. She was the first Asian and woman to chair the World Health Assembly. She led the Indian delegation to UNESCO and WHO. She was a vice president of the International Red Cross, the first chairperson of the Indian Red Cross. She was awarded the Renaissance Memorial Award. She led the BCG vaccination campaign to end TB, as well as the anti-malaria campaign, which is estimated, according to the New York Times, saved some 4 lakh Indians' lives at that time. Of course, she co-founded the All India Women's Conference, and in that she also helped set up the Lady Irwin College. She also set up the Rajkumari Amrit Kaur coaching scheme for scholarships for young sports players. Now, this scheme is very understated in its impact on the sports facilities and sports education in our country. In fact, the government of India sanctioned on her persistence and insistence, because funds was a perpetual problem at that time, a sum of rupees 75,000 for the project, and it was started in September 1953. During the first 4 years of the scheme, it engaged the services of 1 foreign coach and 4 Indian coaches to impart coaching for athletics, hockey, table tennis, etc. She was a regular broadcaster at the All India Radio. Last but certainly not the least, Time Magazine in 2020 named her Woman of the Year for the year 1947 in their list of 100 most powerful women who changed the world in the 21st century. Now, amongst her charitable acts, of course, it's well known that she donated her ancestral home, Manorville, in Shimla, which was a holiday home, uh, for the hardworking nurses, doctors of AIMS, whom she thought could do well with a break in the hills. She often donated sums of money for earthquake and riots relief, as one of her earlier letters to Gandhiji revealed. She also quietly donated money for people's wards who wrote to her seeking funds for their bright children's higher education. One such inspiring example was helping get funds for a young lady pursuing higher education in medicine by the name of Mary Matthew from then Travancore, Kerala, which has just come to light. Upon doing some research, I was astonished to read that the lady, Dr. Mary Matthew, who unfortunately passed away last year, became a distinguished principal and head of medicine at CMC Ludhiana. Such was the silent impact left behind by Amrit Kaur ji long after her death. This is the letter I'm talking about, where a very grateful parent of Matthew to her, thanking her for her support in arranging for her daughter's medical education. And this was written in 1944. Amrit Kaurji was always in the service of others, trying to do her best, so much so that she rarely took rest and as a result did not enjoy very good health due to being overworked most of the times. In an interview to Melville D. Mello, she once remarked how Gandhiji, just a few months after independence, chided her. And after a long day's work, she came back from office to find Gandhiji writing a letter, all on his own at Birla House, Delhi. She asked if she could be of help, and he replied coldly that he does not take help from tired people. He went on to remark how she could look after people's health if she overworked herself without rest, and neglecting her health was a form of violence itself. This noble soul, one of the greatest yet unrecognized women of India and the world, passed away peacefully at her official residence, number 2, Wellington Crescent, on the President's estate in New Delhi. She died suddenly after a respiratory infection at the age of 77. She was cremated as per her wishes at the Gambod Ghat on the banks of the Jamuna River. Hundreds of people filed past the body, including religious leaders, diplomats, doctors, and nurses for whose welfare she worked tirelessly. Her ashes are buried in New Delhi Cemetery on Mansingh Road. This is a photograph of Kaurji along with her favorite pet dog called Tofa. In fact, when Tofa passed away, she was so upset. Gandhiji said, "Grieve not much." The photograph on the left are my great-grandparents, Sir Maharaj Singh and Lady Maharaj Singh. And that's, of course, Amrit Kaur ji. And on the right is a studio shot taken in New York during the latter part of her life. This is a good forum to debunk certain misinformation and myths which are spreading about her. And courtesy social media, they usually go viral once in a while. So the first photo is not Rajkumari Amrit. This is the Rani of Mandi. I guess people have picked this up from Google or Facebook or Instagram and are busy sharing it. So whenever you come across these photographs, I'd be grateful if you would please enlighten the person who shares these photographs that this is not Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. The second photograph is that of a journalist, who I happen to be in touch with recently. And she did this documentary. And this was a photo shoot where she was portraying the role of Amrit Kaur. And people picked this up despite knowing the fact that this is a DSLR shot and a DSLR was not available in the 1950s. So, amongst The many ambassadors and world leaders who mourned her loss, I am apart for the paucity of time as well, but more so for the poignant moment, hosting the tribute of the then ambassador of Great Britain, a former imperial power, paying a glowing tribute to a lady who fought against that very system for independence, and yet could be friends with the oppressor. Well, that was Amrit Kaur ji for you. A life of many great contradictions, yet a life worth living. And that, in a way, sums up the essence of Gandhiji's teachings, which is so relevant for today's India. Is her idea of happiness from her personal diary and her daily prayer. One generally measures happiness in terms of wealth, physical well-being, fulfillment of one's ambitions, and also freedom from sorrow. I agree with Socrates, who says, he is richest who is content with the least, for content is the wealth of nature. My ideal happiness, therefore, consists in doing good always, even to those who do evil to us, in loving our neighbors as ourselves, and doing to all men as we would have them do to us, in being gentle, merciful, and forgiving, in never boasting, but always humbly trying to do right in everything. My daily prayer is again a prayer taught by Socrates. Grant me to become beautiful in the man that whatsoever other things I have may be at peace with those within. I thank you all for being a patient, for giving me a patient hearing. And if time allows, I would be happy to open the floor for a few questions with the permission of the organizers regarding the topic from our distinguished audience.
Thank you so much, Siddhant. Thank you. It was amazing. I think we were transported to another world along with you. You took us there where Rajkumari was a young girl. You showed her in two eras, different eras, her younger days, and how, as a Gandhian and as a freedom fighter. I'm sure people have many questions, although we are running short of time. I would request everyone, if there are any comments, short comments, or anyone who wants to say anything. Otherwise, we would love to wind up the program. Anyone here who wants to say something significant, like some addition to all this? So I think with Sheila ji.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello,
Yes.
madam.
Yes.
Hello. Hello. I have a question. Not question. Interaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
May I know you? You please tell us your name also.
Yeah, my name is Sethu Lakshmi. I am from Kerala.
Okay. Nice.
Shall I interact with the?
Yeah. Quickly. We have not much time.
So I'm going in a hurry. So my question is this much lot of happenings are there in her life. As predecessors, have you thought of making a film of her? Because in Gandhi film also, you told that she was 16 years acquainted with Gandhi, but that was not little bit highlighted in that film. That is, so are you planning to make a film so that there will be the young generation will also be very much eager to know that also. My second thing is that you told that when you are telling the story or her principles, both of you youngsters, you were telling that she was against dowry and she was always against dowry, and she was interested in bringing up the girls to earn a living. So how far AIWC is very much keen in this movement, anti-dowry movement or like that? Because why I am talking is that in this 2 days there was a dowry death, very pathetic dowry death in Kerala, that you will be knowing that an MVI, motor vehicle inspector, he was demanding a car. He did not like even the 10 lakh car. He was demanding more than that. 1 acre land in Kerala, it is happening. So AIWC has not even released a press release in that. So how? What is your what are your movements to uphold Kaurji's that principle? These are my two interactions with you. Thank you.
Well, the first question, I'm sure there will be a film in the works. I can't say when, but surely we'll be doing whatever we can to bring out her life story in the years to come. As far as the second question goes, I'm quite horrified, and I know and I'm aware that dowry is something which is still not over. It's practiced silently all over India. It is completely illegal and immoral. But I would be at a loss of words to say. I only say that I'm pretty horrified to know that, and I hope that the culprit is brought to justice through, and such topics should be brought out in the open, and especially through a forum like the AIWC. And most importantly, women should not. Women should, as I said in the presentation, women should know the person before getting married. You should not get pressurized into marriage. That is the only solution to this problem and this menace.
Thank you so much, Siddhant. I think the second one was not actually your question. It is more to do with the AIWC, and I'm sure the AIWC has taken a lot of steps. This is not the forum actually to discuss that. And now I would take permission to close the program. Thank you so much. And I would invite our Joint Secretary, Supriya Bhalerao, to give the vote of thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Yutika. So this is Supriya Bhalerao, Joint Secretary of AIWC, delivering the vote of thanks for today's program.
Siddhant, please share ko khatam karo. Supriya, to please tell Siddhant to close the share. The PPT is still on the screen.
Could you stop sharing the screen?
I'll just do that. I'll just do that. I hope it's removed.
Yes. No, not yet. Not yet.
No, it's gone.
It's gone, Supriya. It's okay.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
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 I am audible to you?
Yes, Supriya.
Yes, Supriya.
Yutika, am I audible?
Yes, yes. Go on.
Yeah. So I'm here to deliver the vote of thanks. I must say that the whole experience has been so touchy and overwhelming and has an emotional impact on all of us. I'm sure everyone will agree to it. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. Go on. We can hear
Yes,
you.
Supriya, we can hear you.
So firstly, I would like to, thank you so much, because my internet looks little unstable. Firstly, I would like to thank, as always, our President, Mrs. Sheila Kakde, for this wonderful idea of studying and getting, the presentations done on our past president, who have worked hard. Is it okay?
Yes, Supriya, yes.
Supriya, we can hear you very well.
Okay.
We can hear you very well.
And okay, I'll continue. And this is how, we have started knowing all the past presidents who have worked very hard to make this organization AIWC is, what we have now today, the part of. I thank our Secretary General, Mr. Kaur, and our Treasurer, Mrs. Reha, for their great support for the series. Our special thanks to Kuljit Kaur for that elaborate and very interesting presentation. She presented it so passionately, with a heart and soul into it. She researched around 10 to 12 books on Rajkumari and Amrit Kaur, and it was like reading those books in 1 hour program for us. I thank profusely both the brothers, Siddhant and Vikrant Das, who are with us today, who have made a great effort of preserving the old records of their great grand aunt. That is our past president, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur ji. We thank Siddhant
Yeah, where are you, Supriya? I think we have lost her.
She got internet problem.
Yeah. Shall we wait for her for a while? Maybe she'll come back.
Yeah, she'll surely come back.
And did you see Siddhant and Vikrant? Did you see all the messages in the chat box?
Yes, we did.
It is
and we're humbled and so grateful to all of you for listening to us patiently. Thank you so much.
The pleasure
Vikrant,
is all.
please say something. Vikrant is sitting quietly. Meanwhile, Vikrant, say a few words.
Well, ma'am, thank you so much. Siddhant and you have presented this so beautifully, and nobody could have done a better job than both of you. It was a wonderful presentation, and I hope that all of us can jointly preserve Rajkumari Amrit Kaur's records and her life and keep her alive in the values and the way that we live. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very nice of you. Sweet of you. How's your mom?
She's good.
I asked her to join today.
She's joined.
She's listening in. I don't know
I
where.
think the video is a problem with her, but she's listening in and she's there.
Yes.
Mr. Vikrant didn't come on the scene, on the screen.
Now I can see you.
Yes. Actually, Siddhant is the presenter amongst both of us, so he's worked really hard to present this.
He's the doer. He's got.
Yeah, you are also working very hard, Vikrant. You are also working very hard.
Thank you. I background.
Is Supriya back, Yutika?
No, she said she has done her bit. She has done the vote of thanks. So we can.
Yutika, you give that vote of thanks now.
Yeah, we thank.
Hi. I'm here.
Okay, she's back.
Can you see me?
Supriya.
Yes, Supriya.
Can you hear me?
Supriya.
Yes.
How much did you hear? How much did you hear what I said?
You were thanking Siddhant. You were thanking Siddhant.
Yeah. Okay, so I thank both the brothers who are with us today, Siddhant and Vikrant Das, who have made a great effort of preserving the old records of their great grand aunt, our past president, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. We thank Siddhant specially for that brilliant presentation by him. He must have put in a lot of effort to put it together, particularly, with the help of Vikrant. And you have portrayed her so perfectly that it was like seeing a film on her. Can you hear me? Please tell me whether you don't hear me. Whenever.
Yes, we can.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah. I support Setu Lakshmi ji.
Thank you,
there
ma'am.
should be.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm very happy to hear that. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Now I thank our patrons, Mrs. Beena Jain and Mrs. Veena Koliji, for being at the webinar. I thank all the vice presidents, all the zonal organizers, and all the MICs, and all others who are with us today. This program is for you and because of you. So thank you all. Now I have to thank Yutika. Yutika, you've done a wonderful job on hosting it properly. Very
always. As always.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure. This is a lovely team, and we keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Lovely. Thank you, Siddhant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila ma'am. Thank you, Yutika ma'am. Kuljeet Kaur madam.
Siddhant,
You were
Yes.
Priya ji,
brilliant.
thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was really
Brilliant.
wonderful
Shall
having you here.
Shall we close the program?
Very nice.
Yes.
Actually, one request.
Yeah.
If you remember Margaret Cousin's film, we were supposed to run. So remaining participants, would they like to see the film? Pratibha is ready with that, Sheilaji.
No,
What do you
no,
think?
no, no.
Siddhant, thank you so much, Siddhant and Vikrant. See you then.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks
I
a
guess
lot for
we
putting
will
so
leave
much of
now.
hard
Thank you
work.
so much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. सुप्रिया आज नहीं.
Puljeet ji,
आज
excellent.
ठीक है.
Shilari, pranam.
Actually, I also want to have to leave. I have another meeting. So you carry on if you are game.
नहीं 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 युतिका नहीं आज नहीं प्लीज.
अच्छा चल छोड़ दो फिर हम भी
Shila
देखें.
ji,
Chalo.
very nice
Leave it.
program. Sheila ji, Jutika ji,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
nice program.
आप सबको
Thank you
धन्यवाद
for
है.
coming.
धन्यवाद धन्यवाद.
And next time, 13th President Rani Lakshmibai Rajwade. So be there. We'll see you next time, same place. Bye. Good evening.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
Take
Good
care.
evening.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good evening all. Bye.
Excellent. Excellent. Really enjoyed.
और बुलाइए मतलब अलग से